Welcome back to another episode of FPO&G, Financial Planning for Oil and Gas Professionals. This week on the podcast, we have a guest, and it is the newest addition to our team at Brownlee Wealth Management. We have Josh Matthews. Josh, welcome in.
Thank you. Pumped to be here. It's long overdue. So excited to do this today.
Absolutely. I think a great place to start is just, Josh, would love to hear a little bit about your story. Where are you from originally? How did you end up in Houston?
So originally from Hot Springs, Arkansas, which for those who are not familiar, small little town just west of Little Rock. Great place to grow up, probably best known for lakes and horse racing. Fantastic childhood. Went to the University of Arkansas after that and graduated in 2014 and moved straight to Houston. So now I've been in Houston about 10 years, all 10 years working in Houston in commercial real estate. And then just recently made the jump over to wealth management. So couldn't be more excited.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Would love to hear a little bit more about your family. So I know you've got a few kids, but you can kind of introduce the family to our listeners as well.
Yes. So I have 3 kids. My oldest is 4, so you can imagine that can be pretty chaotic. I know you've been there in previous years, but I'll say life is very busy, but fully chaotic, and in kind of the best way. So my wife and I got married in 2014. So immediately after graduating college, kind of a fun story there. We met as kids at Camp Ozark in Arkansas. So my wife, Paige, born and raised in Houston, and for whatever reason, thank God they did, her parents sent her to Camp Ozark in Arkansas, which was just the camp down the road from where I grew up. And we kind of, from a young age, 12, 13, had, I guess you could call it a camp crush, maybe more on my side there, but, and then kind of kept up all through the years. And going back, we ended up working as counselors there and started dating after freshman year. So I was at Arkansas, she was at UT, and we did the long distance deal all the way through. And now 10 years later, 10 years married and 3 kids.
That's incredible. That is awesome. Okay, so you mentioned real estate. Your background is in private real estate, commercial real estate. I would love to hear a little bit more about your first job out of college and what did that early phase teach you?
Sure. Yeah, my first job out of school, I worked for a small, 8 to 10 person real estate consulting firm here in town. And a lot of what we were doing was valuation and consulting work. So interestingly enough, it was a lot of real estate that was under litigation. So a lot of lawsuits. So think groundwater contamination, think, early 2010s, they're building the Grand Parkway around Houston. And so the state of Texas is coming in, condemning property. So we were doing a lot of valuation work, which for me, what that looked like was I was very, very heavy into the models, which just really propelled my career over the next 10 years to get a really firm understanding of, okay, how do you model? How do you underwrite a commercial real estate deal? And what does that look like? What are the things I should be looking for? What do we like our assumptions? Just really laying that foundation in that first role. But I think maybe my biggest takeaway out of that first job was, I spent so much of my time calling brokers, calling developers, and really asking the questions. So what are you guys doing? What's Graystar buying? What's Hines buying? What are all these? You name the large group, right? I was always wanting to know, what are these big funds doing? To me, that was kind of everything when I was 22 years old. And so that was my first job, really strong foundation in real estate, but I also really found that passion and fire to get to more of an institutional level and kind of work on a real estate fund.
Incredible. And Josh, I know you pursued your MBA. What led you down that path? What made you decide to get your MBA, and how did that change things?
Sure. Yeah. So kind of as I was deciding and understanding what I wanted my future in real estate to be like, I was started to obviously understand too that is a very high barrier to entry. If you're looking to work, manage billions of dollars for all these institutional clients, sovereign wealth funds, large pension funds, that the barrier to entry there is quite high. In fact, most of these groups like to hire straight out of these Ivy League schools, which, somehow I made it in the door, but I really, for the most part, we're not taking my calls without the MBA. So, it was certainly a grind there because at that time, we were just starting to have kids, and what it looked like, I needed to keep working full time, and then I was going to go into class and studying nights and weekends for 2 years. So we joke, I'm not sure I saw the sun for 2 years. But all of a sudden I graduated from A&M with my MBA, and man, doors really started opening. So that was pretty exciting.
Fantastic. And would love to hear a little bit about, so, your background, you've spent a decade in commercial real estate. You wanted to move into wealth management. What's the impetus there? Why depart from commercial real estate and move more into personally managing money?
There's a few reasons. And the first thing I would say is, and my wife would always get annoyed with me over the years because I would say to her all the time, man, I really miss my calling as a financial advisor. I really miss my calling. But I think I was so deep into that industry that at the time it felt like there was no turning back. And two, I'll say I was definitely enjoying what I was doing. It was a really cool opportunity. Not many people, I guess, get that opportunity to, I was managing billions of dollars for these institutional capital. And that's, these large pension funds and these banks and insurance companies and sovereign wealth funds, in which in so many ways, that world is not very different from the wealth management space, where we are a registered investment advisor, and we're allocating capital to deals all over the country. And so in some ways, we are entrusted with people's hard-earned money. And so in so many ways, it's wasn't different at all. But I think what really did it for me was there was always a disconnect, because I was never the folks I was managing this money for was all of these institutional groups. So there was some disconnect between never really interacting ever with the people behind that capital. So, the people I was interacting with would be, their asset managers. And so, I think what I really was craving was, especially in some of those hard years post COVID, we were involved in a lot of office deals, just never really getting to see the other side. I'm like, who is on the other side of these investments, and really craving that experience, craving that, personal relationship was what is kind of what we get to do every day. So I think that's what really drew me in.
That's awesome. Very cool. And yeah, it's incredible how many similarities there are. At the end of the day, in your prior world, you were allocating capital and you were helping clients make great financial decisions. And that's exactly what an RIA does. Now, there's a couple questions that sometimes we ask clients this, and I love to just ask them to everyone and get the response. But Josh, would love to hear, what are your earliest memories of money or financial decisions?
So thinking back to my childhood, I'll say growing up, I didn't think a lot about money at all. My family did fairly well financially. My parents had a furniture business in Arkansas, and everything just kind of cruised along until 2008. So I was in high school, and I would have had no reason to believe things would go wrong or could go wrong. But in 2008, my folks found themselves, severely over levered, and pretty much got totally wiped out in 2008. Which, as you can imagine, being 16, your whole world is flipped upside down, and obviously that really stuck with me. So here we are in 2008. I'm 16. I'm going to college in 2 years, and now all of a sudden, it occurs to me I'm going to college and I'm going to be funding every single dollar with student loans. And so, that was the first thought of, man, I really wish we would have thought through this, or at least, tried to protect our downside as much as we could. But obviously, 2008 was certainly significant. So that is my earliest memory. And then going into college, as I'm, drawing on these student loans over the years, I think probably myself, like most college students, you probably never actually think about having to pay that loan back until I want to say it's call it 6 months before you actually graduate. You start getting letters saying, okay, X days after you graduate, you're going to need to start paying these back. And then it hit me, just the full weight of all those 4 years just hit me at once. And so, just as a fun coincidence, I had one of my roommates senior year, huge Dave Ramsey guy, like Dave Ramsey to the max. He carried around all the envelopes filled with cash for all the, this is your food allowance, this is your shopping allowance, all these fun things, and of course, we made fun of him for it. But I think one day I mentioned, hey, I'm graduating with about 40,000 in student loans, and I think just in first sentence out of his mouth was like, "Oh, well, you know, if you follow Dave's plan, you'll be out of this in a year." And I think at the time I thought he was crazy. I knew I probably wouldn't make much more than 40 grand my first year out of school. And so naturally I became a Dave Ramsey listener and then ultimately fully bought in. And after getting married, immediately after graduating, got my wife on board, and I think we really threw everything we had at those loans, and it was really cool to have our big first financial win as a couple, and I think just that experience really kind of sent me down this path of wanting to help other families with their financial plan. Long answer to your question, but there's a lot of factors there.
I love that. It's incredibly cool that you and Paige paid off all of the student loans in under a year. And like you mentioned, what a big win to have jointly as you start your marriage. It is incredibly not cool that there was an actual college student, not just following the Dave Ramsey plan, but executing the envelope system.
Yeah,
That
that's
is amazing.
that's right. That's right. I do credit him with getting me onto the program in the first place. I never carried the envelopes for the record, but it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me.
That's amazing. One of our favorite questions that we love to ask clients that I want to ask you, what do you enjoy? Like what do you love spending money on? What do you spend money on that just brings you joy, makes you happy?
Yes. That was a pretty easy one for me. I love to play golf. So, kind of the joke and I have several friends that are exactly this way. You probably shouldn't let me near a pro shop because I love golf and unfortunately, I'm not a good golfer. So I'm still stuck in the trend of, ooh, if I just get a new putter, I'll be better. Ooh, this new polo will make me better.
Yes,
Whatever it takes, you get this. Whatever it takes, we think that one little thing will get us better. So golf gear, broadly speaking, is probably too big of a line item in our budget.
I love it. I love it. Okay, let's pause there. Let's go into that. If you had to name, it could be three, four, or five, your favorite golf courses you've ever played. Let's hear them.
So first, I'd say my favorite place in the entire world is the Monterey Peninsula of California. So, I mean, you've got probably 10 golf courses within just a few mile radius. So it's pretty easy. And I do have to say Pebble Beach is hard to beat. It's got to be number one up there. And then, I can name six other courses right there with, it's Pebble, it's Spyglass. Obviously Cypress Point is up there. One of the greatest courses in the world. But outside of the Monterey Peninsula, I think Prairie Dunes in Kansas is a really cool, unique old style course that I love. I love getting out there as much as I can.
Very cool. I've got to ask, playing Cypress Point is kind of like climbing Mount Everest for
Yes.
even bad golfers like you and me.
Yes.
And so, how do you ever top that?
You don't. You absolutely don't. I think the only way to top it is maybe you felt this before when you're playing at a course. Again, Justin and I are not great golfers. When you're playing at a very nice course, you have a little bit of, I guess it's imposter syndrome, thinking, man, I probably shouldn't be here.
Yes.
But you are. And so it's
Yeah.
one of those things. I think, topping that for me would be playing it again and being good enough to say, you know what, I should be here. This is
Yeah.
fantastic. And just letting yourself enjoy it is probably the bigger point there.
How nervous were you for your first tee shot there?
I could barely hold the club. It's it's extremely nervous. And so if anyone who's ever seen the first tee box at Cypress Point, you're hitting over a very tall hedge over a road that's about 20 yards in front of you. So it's one, you're worried about hitting a car, not to mention it's a very iconic course and you just want to hit it, you just want to get off the first tee box. So very intimidating. My strategy is just to run to the first tee box, get and just hit the ball before I can overthink it.
Yep.
Is kind of my strategy there. But certainly pretty spectacular golf around there.
I can resonate with that. Josh, I don't even know if I've told you this story before, but a couple years ago, I played Southern Hills and I'd never played there before. So, our listeners, it's one of the greatest golf courses in the country. It's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They've hosted multiple majors on the PGA Tour. A lot of history with this course. And the number one tee box is you don't really expect this if you haven't spent a ton of time in Tulsa. It is on basically a small bluff. You can see the entire city of Tulsa. So it's
Yeah.
very elevated. And then
Yes.
kind of a similar thing. There's a cart path underneath it. And then you also have like the 18 or 9 green kind of lower to the right. And I remember, first time playing it, super nervous teeing off. And there was like what felt like a crowd watching. I don't know why. I don't know what these people were doing there. And then, like, the superintendent of golf drove by and he stopped
Oh
right
no.
before our group teed off. And so it
Oh
just
no.
added to the pressure.
Yeah. They
And
want to see
I'm not
greatness.
proud to say this. I shanked my
Oh,
tee in front of all of these people. And I'm
oh.
pretty sure it just like dribbled low to the right on the number 9 green. It's arguably the worst golf shot that course has ever seen. So I
That's
can
tough.
feel you there.
Yes. Wow, that's fantastic. I'll be sure to remember that.
Absolutely. Okay, back to the task at hand.
Yes.
Josh, what does your role at BWM look like today?
Sure. In terms of where I can come in and add value right away, I think there's certainly a ton of value in being able to leverage my real estate career. Whether I know we have quite a few clients who are interested in alternative investments, and certainly real estate falls in that. So I think right away where I can plug in right now is kind of help clients evaluate some of these investments. And I spent roughly 10 years underwriting deals like this. So certainly able to advise on deals like that. But outside of that, obviously I'm entering this new career. So I've got the CFP to earn. But I will say, luckily, with my last role, also working for a registered investment advisor. It's somewhat of a shortened timeline. I would say a couple things. I'm working to knock out my CFP. One of my favorite things would be advising our current clients on real estate deals. And then two, just an extra set of hands for the firm. It's such an exciting thing. We're growing like crazy, and we just need hands. And
Yep,
happy to be there to support that.
absolutely. You were also very involved in opening our new Houston office. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, that was a blast for me. Leaving a career of real estate, coming into this wealth management career, you obviously have the doubts of, okay, where can I plug in and add value right away? Um, and I want to say I was touring office space with you before I was an official employee.
Oh,
And,
that's right. Yeah,
so that was really cool for me to just to plug in right away and feel like I was really adding value. I'm excited to say we've signed our office lease in Houston. We'll be at the Park Laureate building in Houston, which is, for those who don't know, it's on the west side of town in the Memorial area. Um, which, because I was involved, that's, what a coincidence. It's a mile from my house. So very excited to move into that space. Obviously, we'll still maintain that office in the Woodlands, but it'll be nice to have one in the heart of Houston as well. So really, really fun for me to come in right away and feel like I could add value day one.
Absolutely. We're pumped. We're pumped about the new office. And so now I think our listeners may know this, but I don't think we've given much of an update in the past, I don't know, 6 months worth of podcast episodes. So we currently have offices in Fort Worth, in the Woodlands, and in Houston. And so it'll be fun to see kind of where we go next. Maybe it's New York City, maybe it's Paris, maybe the Monterey Peninsula. Josh,
Love
maybe
it.
you need to help us
Yes,
get a storefront out there.
do that. I can definitely do that.
Okay, I would love to hear a little bit more about real estate background. Josh, I'd love to hear about what is maybe a deal, private real estate deal that went really well, and then what is a deal that maybe went sideways?
Sure. I think the first place I would go if we're trying to get a true apples to apples comparison, two office deals that I can think of right just off the top. So, for those that are unfamiliar with the space, and we all lived through COVID. I think post COVID, the office market got absolutely crushed.
Okay.
Um, so there was so much of a move to the either flexible work or full work from home. So it was kind of the dynamic as if you did not own the best, if you didn't own the best office building and the best market, the best location, the best building, you were in big trouble. And so I think about a couple investments that we made, in the gap that I'm talking about. So post COVID, I'm calling it, 21 to 25. So two separate office deals that went just totally opposite directions. So one, the first thing that comes to mind is, and ultimately the theme here is a flight to quality. So if you were not a quality office product, you were going to be left behind. So one I can think of was a deal in Century City, which is a very prestigious location in Los Angeles. It's right across the street from Los Angeles Country Club, very nice part of town. So obviously the location was excellent, high profile deal, best in class building, tons of visibility. Funny enough, I see it in movies all the time. Most
Wow.
recently the Barbie movie was filmed there. Suits LA is filming there now. Just a ton of visibility. Great part of town. So that deal, even in the heart of COVID, performed. I mean, it's one of our best performing assets in the entire country. And then, compare that to another deal we did around the same time in Seattle. It was a good building, but in the heart of downtown Seattle. But at the same time, it kind of just blended in. The location was fine. It looked and felt like most other buildings nearby. And so once the leasing dried up, man, that thing, it was the first deal in our portfolio to really struggle. So I think, it's funny to look at those two deals, and on one hand they weren't that different, but on the other hand, they were, not just apples and oranges, it was apples and donuts. They couldn't have been
Wow.
more, they could not have been more different. And especially in terms of performance. And so I look at that and try to take, okay, so what is our takeaway from something like that? And I think, in a good market where office product is in favor, I think in a good market, just the average can get by. Average investments, you can do okay. But in a tough market like we saw post COVID with office, it's really only quality is going to survive. And that lesson is true not just in real estate, but I think it's true in public markets and private deals and any investment you come across. So I think it makes it that more important to really vet an investment on the front end. It's because you want to own things that, some things will go wrong at points in time in an investment, and you want to own things that can, take a hit and still be standing when the cycle turns.
Absolutely. I think there's so much to learn there. And to your point, quality can endure. Quality can endure through every type of market environment, every type of economic cycle that we face. I would love to close with this question, Josh. What's made you interested in working with high net worth families in a planning sense? And also, what's made you interested in helping us continue to develop our family office offering?
Yeah, so I mean, going back to kind of where I've been the past 10 years, I started to realize that I wanted to serve people, not institutions. And a lot of times when you think about a family office, it's not that different from an institution in terms of the capital that at times they're able to deploy. But where it gets radically different is now you're there. These are real people, right? It's relationship focused. And so when I'm allocating, billions of dollars for these pension funds, these sovereign wealth funds, but again, like I said earlier, there was never actually at not one time ever meeting those people who were impacted by our decisions. And so, that was a big part of it. Like I said, is really wanting to have a personal relationship. But then when you think about the family office component, or I would just say too, just a high net worth family. If I come in with the mindset of, okay, so you should pay what you owe to the IRS. We can all agree there, but no more, no less. And so with these larger, more complex estates, the opportunities for smart legal tax planning they're enormous. And it's certainly not to say that the stakes are higher, because the stakes are just as high with any family. But I would say the impact that we can make in those situations is massive. It is absolutely massive. And so that's what I think, really gets me excited about working with, whether it be a family office and growing that platform out, or, a high net worth family. Just again, the impact that we can make, and most especially in terms of just taxes, smart tax planning is just a massive, massive impact.
I love that. It really is incredible how much of a difference it is. You're allocating capital in both worlds, in the private equity or private real estate world, as well as wealth management. But there's something special about the work that we do because it's with real people.
That's right.
There's a family, there's an individual on the other side of this that we're helping. And that's just more fun than like you mentioned, than a sovereign wealth fund or a pension fund. So it is special. Well, Josh, thanks so much for joining us. And we are pumped to have you on the team, and pumped for more successful first tee shots too.
Yes.
I think we can both agree on that. Um, so we'll pause it for now, and then I think we're going to have Josh again here in the next couple of months, because we want to do a deep dive into how to think about private investment deals, how to analyze them, how to identify them, and what part of your balance sheet should you be thinking through allocating to private deals, and where do private deals fit in? What are the deal structures? What are the fee structures? So we want to do a much more in-depth episode, so that'll be coming up in the future months. But until next time, contact us, podcast at Brownlee Wealth Management. Thanks so much.